Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Stephen Holliday, and I'm the Chair of the Etobicoke York Community Council. We have quorum. I'm now calling Meeting 3 to order. Welcome, everyone. Just before we begin, I'm just going to acknowledge today is covered by Black History Month. And for those joining us in person, if you care to catch it on your way out, there's a display just outside of the Community Council chambers. The display for Black History Month was put together by a community volunteer, Angela Thomas, who has done this for many years, year over year, and is a welcome addition to the Civic Center. Today's meeting is being held with members of council are all here, city staff participating by both video conference and in person at the Etobicoke Civic Center in the council chamber. The Etobicoke Civic Center is open to the public and anyone is welcome to attend the meeting today. The public may continue to participate electronically by video conference. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting Etobicoke York Community Council page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order that they appear on the list. I ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they turn on their video and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at etcc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. I see none, so we shall proceed.
Mr. Chair, before we start, I would just like to acknowledge former City Councillor Joe Mihevik that's here.
Very good.
Welcome, Joe.
May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting today, from our meeting on January 23rd, 2023? Councillor Morley moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. Thank you for that. We will go through the items. EY 3.1, 20 Brow Drive, Long Branch GO Station, City-Initiated Zoning Bylaw Decision Report Approval, Ward 3. Councillor Morley? Pardon me, we do have some speakers on that, so that will be held in my name. EY 3.2 is 5251 Dundas Street West, Zoning Bylaw Amended Application Decision Report Approval, Ward 3. That also has speakers, and that will be held in my name. EY 3.3 is 5415 to 5481, 5485, and 5487 Dundas Street West, and 15 and 25 Shorncliffe Road, application to lift the holding provision, decision report, approval, Ward 3. Councillor Morley. Yep. Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.4 is 4195, 4219, 4221 Dundas Street West, and 556, 558, 560, 562, and 564 Prince Edward Drive North Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Applications Appeal Report, Ward 3. We have speakers on that item, and that will be held in my name. EY 3.5 is naming of an existing public lane west of Royal York Road extending between Hay Avenue and Simpson Avenue. Councillor Morley.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that item is carried. EY 3.6 Fenmar Drive, Parking Amendments, Ward 7. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.8 Islington Avenue and Prince George Drive / Ridgevalley Crescent Pedestrian Crossing Protection, Ward 2. May I have someone move the staff recommendations? Councillor Morley moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that item is carried. EY 3.9 Evans Avenue and Ourland Avenue Traffic Control Signals. Councillor Morley.
I'd like to move staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.10 Burr Avenue Traffic Calming, Ward 5. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff do have a motion. We put it on the screen that we do a poll.
Councillor Nunziata moves that just get that motion on the screen in a moment. Item
Okay.
10. Yep, item 10. I think we're good. Councillor
No,
Nunziata.
is it item, I think it's item 9.
Nope,
We're
item
at
10.
item 9, aren't we?
Nope.
We're at item 9.
We'll just go through that. EY 3.9 is Evans Avenue and Ourland
Okay,
Avenue.
I have the
That
wrong
is-
numbers in here, so.
Yep, that's been
Yeah.
adopted. So EY 3.10 is Burr Avenue
Yeah.
traffic calming.
Yeah, the screen, sorry, I have the wrong tabs in my binder.
We'll just
Sorry
give it a
about that.
moment to get that one up.
Yeah.
We did skip 7. Yep, my bad. We'll just back up here. Lots of items on the screen. The numbers are right, the sequence is wrong.
Okay.
We give me more
I got a little
coffee.
bit confused there. Okay.
EY 3.7 is Harefield Drive and Barwell Crescent. That's also a Ward 2. May I have someone move the staff recommendations, please? Councillor Crescent moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So we'll just get back to EY 3.10. My apologies to the clerk. We did skip one.
Well, I apologize too. I was jumping the gun on this one. Yeah, item 10, which is Burr Avenue, asking for a poll.
Okay.
City clerk to conduct a poll.
Yep. Okay.
It's-
Councillor Nunziata moves a poll. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.11 Clouston Avenue traffic calming poll results. Also Ward 5. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, so I'm moving the alternate recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves
On
the
the screen.
alternate recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.12, appointments to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management, Wards 3 and 7. Councillor Perruzza, you've got an amendment. Can you place that?
I also have a motion.
You also have a motion. I think we can deal with those. Go ahead, Councillor Perruzza. Okay, Councillor Perruzza moves an amendment. Okay. Councillor Morley.
I'm also moving an amendment, so the motion to amend EY 3.12 by adding the following names to the Lakeshore Village BIA Board of Management: Ratan Gandhi.
Okay, on the first amendment, Councillor Perruzza's. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. On the second amendment by Councillor Morley, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.13, appointment of public members to the George Bell Arena Board. That's Councillor Nunziata, Ward 5.
Right, okay, so I'll move the recommendation, staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.14, 1330 Martin Grove Road, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes. Ward 1, Councillor Crescent.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Crescent moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.15, 2630 Gibbs Road, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 2. May I have someone move the staff recommendations, please? Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. EY 3.16, 25 St. Clair Avenue West, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 2. We have a motion to withdraw. Okay. Do we require a motion to withdraw? All right.
On this one, I noticed it's Ward 2.
It's not.
Shouldn't that be Ward 5? No?
So this item is rightly before the Toronto East York Community Council.
Okay,
It was put
so
here
it's-
by in error.
So it's east of my ward. Okay,
Yes.
that's why I was wondering.
So we're going to
what
put up a motion to withdraw the item from the agenda.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Motion to withdraw that item. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. And just for clarity, that did go to the other community council's agenda, and they'll deal with it. EY 3.174005, Eglinton Avenue West, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 2. May I have someone move that for me? Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.18, 55 Warrender Avenue, designation of fire routes and amendments to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 2. May I have someone move that? Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.19, 14 Vansco Road, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes. Councillor Morley?
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.20, 25 Neighbourhood Lane, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes. Councillor Morley?
I'd like to move staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.21, 250 Royal York Road, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 3. Councillor Morley?
Staff recommendations, please.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. EY 3.22, 55 Browns Line, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 3. Councillor Morley?
Staff recommendations.
Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. EY 3.23, 2320 Eglinton Avenue West, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 Fire Routes, Ward 5. Councillor Nunziata?
Move staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that item is carried. Okay. We get back to the top of the list. We go to EY 3.1, 20 Brow Drive, Long Branch GO Station, City-Initiated Zoning Bylaw Amendment Decision Report Approval, and we have 5 speakers listed. The first speaker is Ruth Mary James. Is Ruth Mary James with us here or online? Okay, we'll go to the next speaker. We'll come back at the end and we'll check. The second speaker is Jonathan Kahn. Morning, Jonathan. Welcome to the
Morning.
Community Council. You have 5 minutes to speak to us. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the city clerk for the opportunity to address today's meeting. My name is Jonathan Kahn. I'm a resident of Ward 3 in the neighborhood of Alderwood, located directly north of the Long Branch GO Station. Myself and family are regular users of the GO Transit for work and family activities. Over the past few months, I've been an informed constituent on the proposed bylaw amendment currently under discussion and the Long Branch GO Station redevelopment more broadly. I read the proposal before this committee and have attended the community consultation meeting that took place on January 18th. Given the nature and the importance of the project to our community, I've also had the opportunity to engage with MP Maloney, MPP Hogarth, and of course, Councillor Morley, who sits on this committee and whose team has been highly engaged on this topic. Thank you. My comments today are structured in 2 parts. First, I'd like to highlight the observations on the process that Metrolinx has led with respect to the Long Branch GO development, which unfortunately leaves much to be desired. Second, I'd like to offer 4 specific recommendations for the redevelopment plan that's currently underway. But before I offer my comments, Mr. Chair, if I could have a moment to acknowledge someone who I think deserves some recognition, and that is City Planner Thomas Rees. Mr. Rees has been the primary contact with respect to this bylaw amendment and was in charge of moderating that community consultation meeting on January 18th. In my view, Mr. Rees offered a masterclass and how to conduct an event. Throughout the site tour and the meeting, Mr. Rees was an active listener to the many concerns raised by our residents, asked follow-up questions to ensure he understood the concerns correctly, and offered thoughtful perspectives on any topics where he could provide context. Following the meeting, Mr. Rees also provided thorough and thoughtful email responses to any questions or concerns that were raised. In my view, Mr. Rees set the gold standard for what we should expect from our city planning team and our community officials more broadly. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said, in my view, for Metrolinx, which also had representatives at that meeting. Throughout the meeting, the Metrolinx team were unable or unwilling to offer perspectives on some of the most basic topics that were discussed and questions which could have been anticipated even with a modest amount of preparation. In some cases, answers from Metrolinx were outright dismissive. Metrolinx failed to offer a compelling vision for the project, and I left the meeting with a feeling that their view of consultation was no more than a box-checking exercise that had little value in Metrolinx's overall plans. I've also had discussions with real estate and construction executives at organizations that engage with Metrolinx, and the feedback has been unanimously negative, with one executive confirming it will no longer bid on a Metrolinx project, given the poor professional reputation of Metrolinx leadership, how it conducts its affairs. Unfortunately, those views appear to have been confirmed with the well-publicized news of Metrolinx's impropriety around tree removal at Osgoode Hall and the disregard and lack of transparency as it relates to the Ontario Line project, which is under review by your colleagues with the Toronto and East York Community Council. In terms of recommendations, number one, parking. As discussed at the meeting, the redevelopment proposal calls for a reduction in parking spaces, notwithstanding the fact that it was well documented that the city streets, both north and south of the GO station, are being congested on a daily basis in contravention of the bylaws. With the infill development that's expected over the next 5+ years, any redevelopment plans for this station must include parking, in line with what has been done with Oakville, Clarkson, and Port Credit. Number two, engagement with the Royal Canadian Legion. It was appalling to learn that the consultation meeting that there had been no contact by Metrolinx with the Royal Canadian Legion, given Branch 101 is adjacent to the GO station. Given the near 100-year history of the Legion in our community, any infrastructure project of this nature must capture a vision that includes the Legion. Number three, integration with the TTC streetcar loop and MyWay bus loop. Outside of some curb cuts that are currently in plans to integrate, there are no plans to integrate the TTC MyWay loop with the Long Branch GO station. For such an important transit project, it's mind-boggling to proceed with a plan as it's currently proposed. And four, an unnecessary removal of a naturalized area. The current proposal includes a walking path immediately north of the station, which would require significant removal of a naturalized area used by residents and provides a natural barrier between the station and the homes. Instead of a walking path which offers limited benefit to those with mobility issues, the plan should include a full-time accessible entrance to the station platform located adjacent to the current stairs at Enfield Drive. Finally, I'd like to conclude with one important ask to each of you as councillors and our elected representatives. Send the Metrolinx plan back to the drawing board. On behalf of the constituents, I'd ask you to engage with your fellow councillors, MPs, to ensure that our voices are being heard. I'd ask you to put pressure on Metrolinx where reasonable, to respond in a meaningful way to address the concerns that have been raised, in the same way that Mr. Rees has exemplified. Our community needs a bold vision, and I hope that this community council will take the necessary steps to demonstrate its leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, and thank you for the kind words about Mr. Rees. And it was directors right there listening. Okay, our next speaker is Bree Gardner from Lamp Community Health Centre. Is Bree available in the chamber or online? Okay.
Hello, everyone. Can
morning.
you hear me?
I can. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. When you're ready to begin, please do so. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, good morning. My name is Bree, and I'm here as a staff member of Lamp Community Health Centre. We are a community agency located in Ward 3 that promotes and advocates for physical, mental, and social well-being. The development at 20 Brow Drive sits within our catchment area, and so we have an interest in any ways the Long Branch and Alderwood communities, as well as the Lakeshore area more broadly, may be able to benefit from this site. I'm here today to note publicly that LAMP CHC is intending to keep a close eye on this development and its impacts in the hope that we can work collaboratively with the city, with Metrolinx, and with developers in order to promote community supports and enable a healthy living situation for all of us in the Lakeshore. In particular, given that this location is a major transit station area, we have an interest in Toronto's inclusionary zoning policies as they may apply to potential affordable housing opportunities on adjacent sites affected by this development, which include a site we have identified as a future affordable housing hotspot at 3730 Lakeshore Boulevard West. All of this is to say that we are optimistic looking forward to what positive impacts this development at 20 Brow Drive may yield for our beautiful Lakeshore community. And thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I didn't check with the previous speaker. Were there any questions of the speaker? No. Thank you for joining us today. Our next speaker is Vanessa Kiel-Vijar. Hopefully I've pronounced that right, from the Community Benefits Agreement South Etobicoke. Is Vanessa available in the chamber or online? Okay. Vanessa, can you hear us?
Hi there. Yes, I was able to turn on my microphone, so thank you so much. I am here.
Good morning. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. Please begin speaking when you're ready. You have 5 minutes.
Wonderful. So you did pronounce it. It wasn't too terrible, not at all. So again, good morning all. My name is Vijar. I'm the co-director of the Community Benefits Agreements in South Etobicoke. So I'm very grateful, first of all, for you holding space for these consultations. So I'm not going to take up too much time here, as I understand the city is going through several large shifts at present, and many particulars are unknown. So the purpose of me being here today is to request that the Etobicoke Community Council and City Council support for a community benefits agreement as part of the Long Branch negotiation project that we're addressing here today. So CBASE in particular is with Toronto Community Benefits Network has been working over the last year to engage local community members, community organizations, and stakeholders to identify priorities for community benefits within South Etobicoke. It does straddle the Ward 2, Ward 3 border, but specifically some of the key priorities that we have identified include good jobs and local inclusive economic opportunities, social procurement supporting social enterprises, local and diverse owned businesses through purchasing of goods and services, affordable housing, including the deeply affordable housing options, environmental sustainability and food security, and community partnerships like supporting local training, community programs, gardening, arts, etc. All the things that make us a rich, diverse ward. So we understand this particular Long Branch Go project, yes, it's semi-far down the pipeline, but it does have a $433 million public investment, which will provide significant improvements in accessibility and whilst employing 200 workers during the peak construction. So such investment provides an opportunity for local benefits to the South Etobicoke community through obviously inclusive employment, training opportunities, social procurement, environmental sustainability, and some of the other things I've already mentioned. So we just seek the City of Toronto's support in working with all the project stakeholders, including Metrolinx, to include these community priorities as part of the project. And just like some of the speakers before me have said, we would really like to encourage someone to maybe take another look at this. So similar to the provincial transit projects like the Finch West LRT and healthcare projects like the West Park Healthcare Center that have included some community benefits within them. So in addition, our collective and partnering coalition agencies would like to be included in any ongoing engagement opportunities as part of this project and in future consultations as new large-scale developments are coming within the area and that could possibly support additional community benefits priorities that ensure affordable, inclusive, sustainable, and complete communities in South Etobicoke. So just one or two last things. Several pressing concerns that have been identified as priority focus areas within South Etobicoke, such as the rapid pace of development, lack of affordable housing options, food insecurity, the environmental protections we talk about, and community safety. We'd also like to ensure that we are also seeing a movement from the City of Toronto's inclusionary zoning policies, especially as it relates to the MTSA and PMTSAs identified for the Long Branch Station area. And this will ultimately provide us with the opportunity to help inform and set the conditions for inclusive economic growth and responsible intensification of urban areas around a network of mobility hubs within our community. So these developments, with consultation and support from community benefits agreements, will ultimately result in opportunities for all of these things, the aforementioned: good jobs, stronger, inclusive local communities. And we firmly believe that South Etobicoke could have access to these opportunities stemming from the publicly funded infrastructure and these large-scale investments in the community. It was a big, long spiel, but I'd also like to thank Councillor Morley's staff for already including us in some conversations. And I thank all of you for what you're doing. It's an uncertain time, and we're again grateful that you were able to take this time to share with us. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. I'll go back to the top of the list. Do we have Ruth Mary James either in the chamber or online? We do not. Okay, and I'll call, are there any other speakers on this item? Seeing none. Are there any members of council with questions? Councillor Morley, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank the speakers on this item for your activism and your engagement. We know how important this is and what a big, hopefully, opportunity this represents for our neighborhood. So we heard a lot about potentially missed opportunities with respect to this file. And I just wanted to find out from planning staff, have there been any conversations with the Transit Expansion Office to look at connecting this big project with the existing Long Branch GO station and the My Way station that has been proposed by some of our speakers here today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Thomas is here, as mentioned earlier, and he will have a better understanding of those matters than I will. So I'd like to ask Thomas if he could come up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there is opportunity to look at a more comprehensive approach to redevelopment of the station. Right now, the current proposal is just for the station site itself and to provide improved accessibility and service for riders. I see this as sort of a interim or first phase in what could happen on this site. And there are ongoing discussions with Metrolinx and other stakeholders and TTC to look at a more comprehensive approach that would somehow or hopefully integrate the streetcar and bus loops and the Royal Canadian Legion site. So I think it's fairly early in those discussions, but we heard loud and clear from the community that that's important, and staff agree. So we're working on that.
Wonderful. And if there's any support that my office can offer, we'd love to be looped into those conversations. So thank you for that, Thomas. Really appreciate it. And just want to, again, amplify and thank you for your exemplary work on this file. The other question that I had was just with respect to community benefits specifically. We heard from residents the value and importance of that, as this is a massive public investment project. What purview do we have as a city to negotiate or to determine community benefits as it relates to this project, which is a Metrolinx project?
For this project, it's really limited in scope and density, so we don't have much in the way of a community benefits charge or things we can secure through the planning process, but we can take back these concerns to Metrolinx staff and see what opportunities they might be able to offer through further discussions.
And then the last thing, Thomas, I got you on the hot seat here. We did a walkabout, and you and I have been to the site a number of times before the GO station or before the public consultation. Can you just speak to the fourth recommendation by Mr. Khan around the naturalized environment to the north? I know there were some options around that. There were some concerns about the tree removal and the general removal of that aspect. So can you speak to us a little bit about what that actually looks like and what potential natural space is at risk?
Yeah, just to be clear, that the area to the north is off-site. It's not the subject of the rezoning, but ultimately Metrolinx has decided to keep that proposal, to have a pedestrian path, an accessible route going through the naturalized area. What they've done is do their best to minimize tree loss by keeping the path fairly minimal and also weaving around trees where they can, and there's also efforts to not have any light trespass. So they're keeping the path, but they're trying to minimize the impact as much as possible.
Wonderful. And then I guess my final question, as we know, this is more of a a look at changing the permissions for the land use. Can you just talk to us about what the next steps will look like and what future potential consultation community will be engaged in?
Yes, so the current rezoning is introducing a commercial residential zone, which would allow for a range of commercial and residential uses. The density is fairly limited at this point, so any future redevelopment proposal would involve a whole other round of community consultation and engagement, probably a bit more extensive than we had with the current round.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, just one question. One of the deputants mentioned the Legion. So how would the Legion be involved?
Well, the
or
Legion.
Was there any discussions with the Legion?
No formal discussions yet, but they're involved just by their proximity. They're right across the street from the station and between the station and the streetcar and bus loops. So, and they have an open surface parking lot. So a comprehensive redevelopment of the area, we imagine, would involve the Legion property. I think at this point, our hope would be that it would be maintained in some form of redevelopment.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, councillors wishing to speak. Councillor Morley, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank participants today on this item and for everyone in the community for your activism and your engagement. This is an important change that's going to come forward. We currently have the Long Branch GO station in the Long Branch community that has no elevators. It's not currently accessible in its current form, and so this does represent some potential improvements for our neighborhood. But as we've heard, we still have a little bit of a ways to go to ensure that it is an equitable and inclusive process. So I just wanted to go on record to ensure that there are ongoing conversations between Metrolinx and the City of Toronto, specifically our Transit Expansion Office, so we can look at further integration of this site and not hopefully avoid a missed opportunity for us to see some larger scale improvements in connectivity for users and pedestrians. And I just wanted to encourage folks to continue your engagement on this file as we move forward. I will be supporting staff recommendations so that we can formally allow for the current use of this space, and really will continue to ensure myself and my office are highly engaged on this file so we can get the best outcome as possible for residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wishing to speak? All right. Councillor Morley moves the staff recommendations. All those in favour? Any opposed? That item is carried. EY 3.25251 Dundas Street West zoning bylaw amendment application decision report approval. I have 4 speakers registered. The first speaker is Kevin White from the 6 Points Residents Association. Is Kevin here or online? Okay. Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You have 5 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
Okay, name's Kevin White, a member of the 6 Points Residents Association. I live in a condo 90 meters away from 5251 Dundas Street West, and our group has several concerns regarding this application, and I've heard from many residents in the area that are strongly opposed to the plan. We support and welcome developments on a large scale that are suitable to the community and meet the needs of present and future residents. And we understand the rationale for intensification by transit hubs. Borrowing from the philosophy of our recent mayoral candidate, we believe Toronto should be planning and building communities to suit its residents from 8 to 80 years old. However, this development is not suitable for an 8-year-old or an 80-year-old. There's a lack of amenities such as schools, a lack of services for seniors, as well as for adults of any age. At this very busy intersection, neither children nor seniors can cross the road easily and cannot access any practical shopping by foot, other than a retail strip plaza, which is 6 Points Plaza, that's scheduled for redevelopment and be torn down. This proposal gives zero consideration to pedestrian safety of such a large influx of residents, which is key for quality of life in any community. The lack of parking doesn't support changing lifestyles, like when the need arises for a vehicle due to family obligations or employment, they'll be compelled to move out and find a home with parking. And the proposal does not support long-term living. Rather, we anticipate this building will be attractive for investors who will provide short-term rentals, as long-term living is not sustainable, and very small units without storage lockers, which is what these will be. The proximity to the transit hub is only useful for those working downtown, where offices are increasingly vacant. A significant amount of employment has moved to work from home, and many major companies have relocated their main operations to Mississauga and Markham, both of which are difficult to access by transit. Therefore, the proximity to transit has limited benefit, as residents still depend on cars and deliveries to purchase basic life necessities such as food, toiletries, and medication. This development fosters a delivery culture as evidenced by the recent new building in the area like Station Place. They have a constant stream of vehicles delivering food, other goods, and pick up residents that go out, which is on a private lane, I may add, called Biking Lane. Now it's very public. The intersection of Dundas and Auckland is a main thoroughfare for TTC buses. They are turning by that site every few minutes. As the residents of this building will be reliant on deliveries, buses will be stalled, navigating around the vehicles, and will affect the TTC schedule, which nobody wants. A residential building of 50 stories on such a small footprint of land next to hydro towers is not practical or healthy. There is ample evidence that living in such close proximity to hydro lines can contribute to health problems such as cancer. There's no green space for the residents to access. They'll be surrounded only by asphalt and overhead wires, and there'll be zero integration into the community, as evidenced by other recent developments along Dundas Street West. Now, architectural renderings for this intensification of 6 Points area, they always depict a streetscape with lots of trees, pedestrians, happy biking going down the path and sidewalks, but this application does not contribute to that vision at all. It's an isolated tower with residents depending on deliveries. There's little incentive to walk around in the area and to get to know the neighbors. We're creating a canyon of towers along Dundas, not building a new community, as evidenced by Kip District and Pinnacle, 13 planned. A lot of those are high rises too. That's enough, we don't need this one. The proposal is a highly inappropriate development for this site that does not contribute to long-term positive planning for the area. We have sufficient intensification, as already planned with the towers for further west on Dundas and Shorncliffe Road, as Kip District and Pinnacle and beyond there. We ask Council to please reject this proposal as presented and recommend a more suitable building for the site, such as commercial. Yeah, I guess the lessons learned from Station Place are now applied here. There's no parking there. God forbid if an emergency vehicle was to come here, like yesterday I saw a big wide black pickup truck illegally parked the wrong way on Biking Lane. If a fire truck or ambulance were to come zooming by, it wouldn't surprise me if one of these days is blocked, they can't get through. What are they going to do when this new building goes up? Are they going to legally park on Auckland or Dundas? I see so many illegal U-turns on Auckland, buses honking. Are they going to illegally park on Biking and walk across the street? That's the biggest concern, personally, I have. Where are they going to go with no outdoor parking? It doesn't matter if you have no cars in the building, Station Place doesn't, but all the deliveries, whether it's food deliveries, visitors, they're all parking illegally. And with this one, I don't know where they're going to go.
Thank you, Mr.
That's a
White.
disaster waiting to happen. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Irene Jones from the South Eatonville Residents Association. Is Irene in the chamber or online? Okay. Good morning, Irene. Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Jones. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You have 5 minutes to speak. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. As you just said, my name is Irene Jones and I live at 16 Acorn Avenue, which is very close to the proposed development of 5251 Dundas Street West. I'm currently the secretary for the South Eatonville Residents Association and have expressed my concerns about this development on numerous occasions. This is a small property surrounded by busy roads to the north and the east, a TTC parking lot for the subway to the south, and west of all, a hydro tower to the immediate west. The property has been used for commercial purposes in the past, and I believe that this is a more appropriate use of the site. Building condominiums or rental units at this location, where the only amenities are a TTC parking lot, a subway or bus, a closed public school, and inadequate open space, is in my mind not good planning. We're aware of the 17,000 plus new units being considered for this community, and their well-being should be of the highest priority. Inadequate parking provisions will no doubt lead to on-street illegal parking and force the hydro corridor to be used as a parking lot. We know that a large number of bicycle storage racks are to be provided, and while cycling lanes are, and in the near future, being expanded in the community, they are not useful for transporting to school or childcare. They do not provide a place for apartment cleaning staff, personal care workers, or repair service personnel to park when visiting clients at that building. I believe a more appropriate use of this site might be professional offices for healthcare, legal, planning, and architectural services because of its proximity to the proposed new civic center. After all, people still need a place to work as well as live. Today, I would like to ask Community Council to refuse this application and refer it back to the city planning for a more thoughtful and mindful proposal from the developer. Another option would be for this application to be relocated to the east side of Kipling Avenue near the new park. This would allow new units to be built in a better environment than a concrete, asphalt, and overhead cables. A commercial venture could then be considered for the 5251 Dundas Street West site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. The third speaker is Mitch Gascoigne from Centre Court. Good morning, Mitch. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Mitch Gascoigne. I'm a partner at Centre Court. I'm the applicant for the project, the developer that's planning on hopefully getting approval today. Firstly, I'd like to say that it was a joy working with staff through this application. We made our application December 2021, and we're standing here 13 months later, having worked with Desiree and Al through a bevy of issues and addressed them and brought forward their report today. I think it's appropriate for me to address some of the concerns that were raised by the previous two speakers, and I'll do my best. The first one was parking. This, to me, is the definition of a transit-oriented community. We're sitting directly adjacent to not only a subway station, but a bus station and a GO station. It's a major transit hub. It's the place that that Centre Court likes to develop, somewhere that you can, access all parts of the city just through a short walk to transit. We're not amending any of the parking bylaws. We're actually following the recently approved parking bylaw that was passed early last year. So yes, we do have a low parking rate, and we think the people that want to live here will not really be car dependent. Accessibility, this corner is actually quite constrained in its current configuration. There's a former Starbucks there and a retaining wall, and part of the proposal, staff was really focused on trying to open up that corner. So we've agreed to do a POPs space at the corner. We're actually widening the sidewalk to over 6 meters wide along Auckland, and on Dundas we're extending the width of the sidewalk, and then we're also doing a road widening, so the road itself will be widened. pick up and drop off. In these days, lots of folks like to get Amazon and Uber and those sorts of things delivered to their house. And it was important to transportation staff that within the building that we actually had a space at grade near the loading dock that was dedicated to those sorts of things. So someone will be able to, pull into that area, run and do their delivery, and then take off and hopefully have no disruptions on the surrounding space. Bike paths along Dundas are something that the city has been considering for a while in this node. And one of the things that we're doing is removing the curb cut that currently exists on Dundas and swinging it around to Auckland. So part of the proposal was to make sure that those bike paths could be installed, and we'll obviously work through those details at site plan and streetscaping permit submission. And then the last thing is that there is a hydro corridor that's directly adjacent to us, and we took that very seriously. There's a handful of other applications throughout the city that are adjacent to those sorts of infrastructure. It's just kind of part of urban living. So we submitted a report to Toronto Public Health, which was peer reviewed and reviewed and given the okay by them. And then separately, we actually reached out directly to Hydro One, worked through them and their approval process, and made sure that they were comfortable with the proximity to those hydro lines. We're really excited about this development. We're excited about the entire area. We think that bringing housing to Etobicoke directly adjacent to this transit station is the most appropriate use, and I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Any questions of staff? Excuse me, of the speaker? Councillor Morley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, I think, a great location, as you mentioned, for the kind of density that you're proposing. We want folks out of their cars as much as possible as we move, into the future, and have them on our transit wherever possible. And so thank you for pointing out the fact that you are following the city guideline and policy in that area. And I know it is a change for many, but this is how we're going to change behavior, I think. So that's an important consideration. My question is just with respect to green space. I know it is such a limited site, and it is a transit-specific area, already lots of concrete in the neighborhood. So I just wanted you to speak to any considerations that you all gave to green space as it relates to this proposal.
Yeah, sure. So we are making a parkland contribution, which will be 10% of the value of our site, which will go to parkland wherever staff deems it appropriate within the area. But separately for the things that the residents will actually enjoy is that we have outdoor amenity space, 2 meters squared per unit of the building that will be incorporated. And we're going to have to work through the details of what that is, but that's dog runs and child spaces and things like that will actually be incorporated within the building itself. Up on the 3rd or 4th floor, we'll have some cutouts of the building where people will be able to kind of get a little bit of that access to the outside. We think that what we're doing, and the thing that I've overlooked, but I already mentioned, was the POPs itself. It's a widening of a corner, so might not feel like, a substantial space, but it is quite substantial for a site of this size, where we're trying to take that corner and make it substantially more, inviting when we're done versus what you're walking on right now.
I do think that will be an incredible improvement to the area for all of the pedestrians and users who funnel down that street to get down to the station. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Any other questions? I was going to ask one, if I can pass the chair to Councillor Nunziata.
Councillor Holiday, questions?
I just wondered if you could describe to me how visitor parking works in this building.
Yeah, sure. So following the bylaw, the way visitor parking is allocated is there's a minimum number of spots. I think by memory, there's 5 or 6 spots. So what will happen is you'll enter the main garage door, go downstairs, and you'll be able to park within the building. There'll be a concierge that will be able to open and close the door for you. But all of the visitor spaces are in accordance with the bylaw, the citywide bylaw.
So the number of visitor spaces meets the bylaw. I think the number in the report is 8. What happens to the 9th person that comes?
Hopefully they took the TTC. If they didn't take the TTC, they're going to have to find parking in the area. Visitor parking is something that is changing in the way that we're developing buildings. Having a sea of visitor spaces downstairs is a really difficult use to incorporate into a below-grade garage, which is the way that the city and personally we want to develop our own buildings. It means that as people live there, they'll be able to signal to their friends and family if spaces are available or not. And if not, part of the analysis that we did is that there's sufficient capacity within the surrounding area that they can park on the street or park in a paid-for lot or whatever happens to be available to the local community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members wishing to speak? No members wishing to speak? So, I'm sorry, Councillor Nunziata, questions of staff.
So just questions of staff. So I'm looking at the revisions, some of the application revisions from previously. So originally in 2021, proposal was 52, now it's 50, correct? And that's why the parking was reduced.
Through the chair, yes, this is a revised proposal, which is before, the bylaw that's before committee is based on a revised proposal.
Right. And so I don't see anything in here about community benefits. What are the community benefits?
Well, it's going to be a project that goes under the current legislation, so it would be community benefit charge, but what you have before you is not beyond the site itself in terms of what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Clerks let me know that there was another name for the list, so I'm just going to call out the name. I have Lucy Falco registered. Is Lucy in the chamber or available online? Okay, I understand she's being disconnected, so okay. Thank you very much to the clerks. I will go back into the committee. I'll just ask, are there any questions of staff? I'm going to ask one. If I can pass the chair to Councillor Nunziata, please.
Councillor Holiday, questions to staff.
Thank you. I wondered if somebody could just walk me through what the plan is for visitor parking and how that applies to our bylaws and what the consultant's report said. In other words, the sub-report to this. How did they justify how 8 parking spaces would work, and in particular in the context of the area?
Through the chair, it's Luigi Nicolucci, manager of Area 2 Development Planning and Review. We reviewed the application and the parking aspects associated with the application. As was mentioned earlier, the proposed parking supply, whether it's for visitors or for residents of the building, satisfies the bylaw requirements, and any excess visitor parking demand that could arise at the site. There are other parking opportunities in the nearby area, whether it's parking in other parking lots, off-street parking lots in the area, or whether it's parking in on street as per the existing parking regulations that apply.
Did it specify where the other parking lots were? Like, did it go into that level of detail in the traffic consultant's report?
The only time we really require that detail is if a proposed parking supply does not satisfy the applicable bylaw requirement. In a case like that,
okay,
our division or our unit would then ask for justification to deviate from the bylaw requirement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
I'll just check. Are there members wishing to speak? I'm going to ask Councillor Nunziata just to take the chair. I'm going to make one brief comment.
Councillor Holiday to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. I actually take to heart, because I know the spot well, live in the community, some of the comments from the speakers about concerns over parking. I guess it's a double-edged sword, right? When you're near a subway station, you know, there's this idea that there could be less parking, and that works with respect to some of the concerns about traffic congestion, right? I think I've got it right, 34 spaces in this building, so the demands placed on the street network by automobiles would be less. I would flag, though, and maybe I would express my frustration Council indeed did change the parking bylaws. PH 29.3, I've got it on my screen. I think there were 3 votes against. Count me in one of them. I have a lot of concerns about how 8 parking spaces will work, and I acknowledge that that staff have told us that they're meeting the requirements. I know the area. I mean, there's the subway parking lot. I don't think that's intended for overnight parking. And I think that this is something that the community should keep an eye on, because there isn't a lot of street parking in that area unless you want to park blocks away in front of somebody's house where there's no on-street parking. And I can't think of a public parking lot right now. Maybe there is one, but it would be quite limited. So I just think collectively, as the Etobicoke city center grows, we have to be realistic that, yes, I think many people will live in that area that will use transit regularly, but there will be visitors to those spaces, and some of them will stay overnight. And so, you know, that is something that's been flagged with wisdom by the community, and I hope applicants going forward will pay attention to that, because we want to have very livable buildings that people move into. And, you know, this one is right almost on top of a subway station. How exciting if you take the subway, you know, to every day to move around. But I think as time goes on and this area gets built up, we have to be very practical about these things and create a community that will function. So those are my comments, and I think the comments are just a little bigger than this particular application, but, you know, they maybe speak to the decision that council made, and, you know, this is some of the results of those decisions. Whether you're happy about it or not, I do worry about the functionality. Thank you. With that, Councillor Morley, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just to move staff recommendations on this item.
Councillor Morley moves staff recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. Okay, we're on to EY 3.4, which is 4195, 4219, 4221 Dundas Street West, and 556, 558, 560, 562, and 564 Prince Edward Drive North, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications appeal report. I have 2 speakers registered. The first speaker is, don't have my glasses here, it's John Laleggio. I got that right? Morning, John. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You have 5 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, members of Community Council, and for taking the opportunity to let me speak on behalf of a bunch of residents and ratepayers. I've been a 25-year resident next door to this site, 554 Prince Edward Drive. We've always envisioned that something will happen on this site over the last 25 years. That's not debatable. It's just the scale and scope is really out of context here, and I think we all see it the same way. Councillor Morley and his staff, Ali, were very helpful in coordinating our efforts to bring more attention to this site. And I think we're going in the right direction now to give it the time it needs to be properly assessed. This applicant, I think, is really out of scope and character based on recent applications and developments in that area across the street, being 8-story and 10-story building on Islington and on Prince Edward Drive and Dundas. So this is really out of character from what this proponent has done recently and what is actually permitted. We consider this an overreach. I think it's a disaster for the infrastructure that is available to this 100-year-plus community. We don't think I personally don't think it's good planning. I'm not a planner, but I'm involved in that type of business. And this is something that a community such as ours probably cannot tolerate or accept for the long term. I think housing is needed. We all agree with that. But I think how it goes about this ad hoc planning process is a little too rushed and rapid given the mandate of the province, and I think we have to take a bit more of a breath here to probably consider what is a good fit with the existing community that's already there, but we do acknowledge there's going to be some housing development and due process as required. So that's my short and sweet comment, because my colleagues and my neighbors will have something more to say, but thank you for your time, Ms. Marley as well, and Ali for being receptive to our concerns.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. The second speaker I have is Mike Langdon, Kingsway Park Ratepayers, Inc. Morning, Mike. Welcome to the Etobicoke York Community Council. You have 5 minutes.
Morning, thank you. Councillors and staff, appreciate the time. Particularly appreciate Councillor Morley's engagement on this file and her staff as well. So my name is Mike Langdon, live at 92 Government Road. Property backs on to this development. I am also a director with Kingsway Park Ratepayers. I'll cover two topics briefly. First, the reasons that we are opposed to this proposal and why we would hope that the city would join us in opposing it at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And secondly, I'll make a commitment to council about how we will treat this matter going forward as an association. So I'll begin with our reasons for opposition, and I will be brief. They're well covered in staff's report. At 18 and 10 stories, the development is too tall. It doesn't comply at all with a 45-degree angular plane. The 10-story building closest to my back fence, I think, cuts through at about the 4th floor, so it's not even close. The development, frankly, the height of the development in our community is egregious. The development is too dense, so we're approaching double the allowed density for this site, which is, in our view, too much. We are concerned about traffic, as planning staff is. We are concerned about wind, infrastructure, noise, the impact on transit, and others. But I will keep my comments about our concerns brief because they are well covered in the staff report. I will touch briefly on how the developer has engaged with the community on this file. So by appealing a dormant 2016 application to the Ontario Land Tribunal and conducting no consultation with the community at all, we are faced with the largest development in our community's history with absolutely no community consultation. The developer's behavior in this situation, frankly, has been egregious. Dunbar appealed this issue to the Ontario Land Tribunal and provided the community less than 30 days' notice. Again, we were not preparing for this. There was no council meeting. We were not gearing up for it. A notice landed in my mailbox saying I had 30 days to appear at the Ontario Land Tribunal to oppose something that is 300% of the allowed building height. This is an entirely new proposal. It is not an amendment to the earlier proposal. The community meeting that the developer organized was organized at the request of the City of Toronto, not at the request of the developer. So we had to push and force for there to even be a conversation about this matter. The development notice posted in front of 4195 Dundas Street West currently shows the old proposal, an 8-story development. This story is 18, 3 towers of 18 stories with an additional 10-story building 30 feet behind my back fence, again, which does not comply with the 45-degree angular plane. The developers also included properties it doesn't own, specifically 554 Prince Edward Drive North, which is owned by Mr. Ilegio, in its proposal. It also doesn't own the community EMS station, which it has included in its proposal. So I'm not really sure how that works. I don't know how you build on land that you don't own, but that's another matter, I suppose. So it's clear that Dunbar's approach to community consultation has been at best an afterthought, and I would argue that it's actually been something far worse. So this brings me to my final point. No one takes any pleasure being here arguing against housing. I consider myself a reasonably progressive person. I understand the housing crisis. But just simply based on the egregiousness of the size and the lack of consultation with our community. This is a community that's been around for 100 years. I've lived in it for 40. I'm 44. Actually, I've lived in it for 44. My son, my dad, and I all went to the same elementary school, Lambton Kingsway School. We're deeply embedded in the community. We're welcoming to new residents. Very happy to have new residents in our community. But this is simply too much. There's been no consultation. And for that reason, we would ask you to join us in fighting against this at the Ontario Land Tribunal. I will say one closing comment. The impact of developer behavior like this is significant. Our community is going to spend well over $100,000 to defend against something that is clearly outrageous. I'm going to be into it personally for $10,000 or $20,000. I'm lucky that I'm in a position to be able to do that. But this is not how this should work. Dunbar has entirely subverted the City of Toronto planning process and put the community, frankly, in a really horrible position. So we would ask that you join us at the Ontario Land Tribunal in trying to broker a more reasonable deal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for joining us. I will call to see if there are any other speakers on this item. Okay. I don't have your name on the list. Please come on up. If you could just introduce yourself.
I'm not good with the computer. I tried to register. Clearly didn't take.
Good
Sorry.
morning.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Fiona Campbell. I'm the current president of the Kingsway Park Ratepayers Association. That's a group of taxpayers whose interest in the district goes back more than 50 years. We're incorporated. We do recognize the reasonableness of housing intensification near publicly funded transit systems, and we support in principle the recent changes that permit additional units tucked into existing homes and back gardens. However, commercial lands that flank our single-family residential neighborhoods need to be handled with genuine respect for the current residents and a functional community. What has been proposed here is not good planning, in our opinion. The scale and oversized massing of this development at 18 stories where 6 is currently permitted is simply an attempt to extract the maximum return on an investment. But moderation is required so that the flanking neighbors are not unjustly and permanently penalized by the virtue of proximity. The gentle intensification the city supports does not mean tripling intensity and profoundly hurting the people unfortunate enough to live within that established community already under strain. Your support to modify the plans for this plot at LPAT will be greatly appreciated by voters in Ward 3. Treating the affected neighbors in an inclusive and community engagement is expected across this ward and across the city at large. And I thank you. I thank you for supporting the staff report, which feels that this entire project is ill-designed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none. All right. I will check one more time if there's any other speakers. Seeing none, I will ask if there are questions of staff. Councillor Morley. I had one. May I pass the chair to Councillor Nunziata?
Councillor Holiday, questions to staff.
Thank you. It's a brief one. It was mentioned in the speaking today that within this application there are, I think, 2 properties, is what someone said, that are not owned by the applicant. I just wondered how that's possible, that an application could be submitted for something else, for a property that one doesn't own. Is that unusual or is it usual?
Back to you, Mr. Chair. It is very unusual. When we were preparing for the OLT conference meeting in the fall, we realized at that time that the real estate division had not authorized or given consent to include city lands, EMS station, in this application. And so we raised that with legal, and legal dutifully brought that to the attention of the OLT. What the OLT said, and it is true, the Planning Act does not prevent you from applying to rezone someone else's lands. How far you're going to get with that, of course, is pretty limited because you have to be party to wanting to redevelop your own lands. So that was brought to the OLT's attention. We challenged Dunbar on that, and it forms, in part, some of the reasons for opposition to this application. At this stage, the city is not party to this application. We have confirmed that with EMS. We've confirmed it with CREM and Create TO. And at minimum, the application has to be changed to exclude those lands for, I believe, for the OLT to consider this matter.
Okay, and I think there was mention of another property. Do we know what that is? Is that a privately held property, or it was mentioned by the speaker? I don't know.
That's my property.
Okay.
Adjacent to that.
Okay.
That's the 554.
Oh,
Is it a
through you,
home?
Mr. Chair,
Or
that
just
was a mistake on our part. And we changed the title of our report. You see an addendum on file. We had accidentally included in the addressing of the title of the report this gentleman's property. It's been since excluded.
Okay. It was a technical question, so that's all it is. And unfortunately, our process doesn't allow to iterate. Perhaps we can connect you with your counselor after the meeting and get any questions sorted out, I'm sure. But Thank you to staff. Thank you, Councillor, for taking the chair.
Can I just ask a question just on?
Councillor
clarification?
Nunziata.
Yeah, so does that prevent the applicant for acquiring some of the properties that he doesn't have? Like, I mean, if they go up for sale, or, I mean, does that prevent that when you go to the hearing?
Through the chair, no, I mean, it is not unusual during application processes for applicants to acquire adjacent properties
Right.
and then revise the proposal and add them. So that is possible.
So the applicant could purchase these properties prior to the hearing?
That's possible.
Right.
I think based on the information we have, that's highly unlikely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
A slight clarification on that. It's my understanding that you don't need to own property to include it as part of a rezoning application.
Through the chair, as I said previously, the Planning Act doesn't prevent someone from applying to rezone a piece of property they don't own. However, I do want to add that our internal processes at the city, including our application form, when anybody applies to rezone lands, I think it's on page 3 of our application form, there's clear stipulation that if your application includes lands that are owned by the city, you must have the consent of the city. And that was
Okay.
not garnered in this.
So I've had an application go through my ward where the and I won't get into the specifics of it, but because I too have asked this question in great detail, and in fact I thought about bringing a motion forward, to direct the staff to clearly delineate ownership when applications come forward on all of the parcels. Because so an application came in my ward where the city has the benefit of an easement through the site, a considerable easement for a sewer that was placed in there years ago. It probably makes up at least a third of the entire site. Nowhere in the application or during the rezoning cycle was that easement ever identified as being a city in an easement in favor of the city, because if it had, then the city would have been in a much different position to negotiate that development as its rights would permit. I was told at the back end of the process, after all of it gone through the zoning, gone through the land tribunal, everything got approved, that then this easement came, obviously has come up because it needs to be dealt with in order to permit the development. So that was never raised. That was never brought forward. How did that happen? If you have page 6, where on page 6 you have to identify that.
Through the chair, I don't know the specifics of the case you're raising, but I would say this. The application form clearly outlines that if you're including lands owned by the city, you must disclose it and get the permission to include those lands. That is slightly different, though, in terms of an easement in favor of the city. There are lots of lands across the city that are owned by private owners where the city has a right or an easement over those lands. I don't think that needs to be necessarily disclosed in the application form, but it will undoubtedly be included in the plans, like the survey that is part of the application package. So it would be, I think, very hard not to know that there was such an easement if a normal application package came in.
Well, I can tell you that we dealt with this application, and that easement was never, ever identified as an easement in favor of the city, an easement which, quite frankly, is akin to ownership. So your page 6, what I'm saying is that your page 6 then needs to be, amended to ensure that those rights are also clearly identified, because it's important for the community. It's important for this council. That's the question. The question is essentially, you're telling me that there's a page 6 that does this stuff, and I'm saying to you that I'm giving you an example where your page 6 missed that, and that's very, very, very significant, right?
Through the
very
chair.
significant
Thank you,
omission.
Councillor.
Not sure exactly what the question is, but from a legal perspective, an easement is not akin to ownership. Having said that, we will normally find out about such easements because a survey and plans will undoubtedly show those, normally. I can't speak for the application.
So the question is, you find out about it, how do you let us know? Because I didn't know in that instance.
Through the
Community
chair,
council
I'm at a
didn't know,
slight
the community didn't
disadvantage
know.
Not knowing
Yeah,
this file.
to be fair, if you can answer only on this subject or broadly, I understand you may not have the materials on the particular file that Councillor Perutz is asking about.
Yes, through the chair, in our reporting on any application, we would include information through that report that an applicant's lands also are burdened by, for example, an easement in favor of the city. It would be really hard not to have that included in somewhere in the description of our reporting out on this.
And time is up, so thank you. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Members wishing to speak? Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. This has been one of the files that has taken a lot of time for my office to dig into. It is unfortunately not a good representation of what we think is good community engagement on behalf of the applicant. It was described very well by the local residents who've gone to great lengths to both fundraise, become a party to this revised proposal, and to make sure that the community is highly engaged. There's been a petition submitted, and I would just draw my colleagues' attention to that fact. And the other piece for me personally, again, is the way in which this application revision has come about has really been an overreach and not in keeping with what we think is appropriate consultation, whether it be with the city, with the local area, or frankly, it's just not in keeping with our official plan by any stretch of the imagination. So one of the biggest concerns that we have flagged, and my colleagues have asked questions on this, is the inclusion of city-owned property in this application. We have done our due diligence, as well as city planning, who've done incredible work on this file, and I would just like to thank the assigned planners for their detailed work. But to our knowledge, as been confirmed by planning staff, the piece of property is not declared surplus, nor is it for sale. So it is unusual that it would be included in this application, and it is, again, what is being proposed as the parkland portion of this proposal, which again is not something that I'm willing to support. So I would like to move staff recommendations with an amendment. If clerks could put up the amendment on the screen, please. It's to add a recommendation to number 2 within the report that says that requires owner having addressed all outstanding issues regarding the on-site park dedication, location, and configuration raised by Parks Development to the satisfaction of the General Manager of Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. This is a technical amendment, but to ensure that this aspect of the plan consideration is also included. And we are looking to move staff recommendations that would have the City of Toronto a party to the ongoing appeal of this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none. On Councillor Morley's amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Just check with the clerk. We have no outstanding items. And we do have some bills. Councillor Morley.
I move that bills 197 to 208, prepared for the February 27th, 2023 meeting 3 of the Etobicoke York Community Council, be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Councillor Crescent.
That confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 3 on February 27th, 2023 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. That's it. Councillor Peruzza moves adjournment. Thank you to everybody.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move adjournment.
He's not going to move adjournment.
No, I'm happy to move adjournment.
Oh, he's happy to move it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.